Welcome to our story world. Before the first scene begins, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what season of love you belong to: spring, summer, autumn, or winter. Asterisk, the first morning of spring carried a soft whisper through the meadows, a promise of renewal. The hills around the small countryside village of Willowmere gleamed with dew, and the scent of wildflowers floated in the air like music. Into this quiet world came Evelyn Hart, a young artist from the city. Clutching a worn suitcase and her sketchbook, her heart heavy with dreams. She didn't yet know how to paint. She had come searching for something her art had lost. Feeling, the city had drained her colors, her joy, her inspiration. Critics praised her technique, but she knew something vital was missing. She hoped that in this peaceful village, far from the noise of fame, she might rediscover what her heart had forgotten. Evelyn rented a small cottage on the edge of the fields. From her window, she could see rows of tulips, stretching like rivers of red and yellow. Every morning, she would walk among them with her sketchbook, trying to capture the way sunlight touched their petals, but the drawings always felt lifeless. She sighed. One day, closing her book in frustration, that was when she first met Liam Rowan. He was kneeling in the dirt a few yards away, his hands buried in the soil, planting new bulbs. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his face bronzed by sunlight, and his eyes held that gentle calm only people close to the earth possessed. He looked up as she approached, smiling in a way that made her feel instantly at ease. "Morning," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "You're the new tenant in the Miller cottage, aren't you?" "Yes," Evelyn replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm trying to paint these tulips, but they refuse to look alive." Liam chuckled softly. "Maybe that's because they're not just flowers. You have to know them before you can paint them." Evelyn frowned slightly, intrigued. "Know them? They're just plants." He shook his head. "Every flower has its season, its mood. Some bloom quickly and fade. Others take their time. You've got to feel the soil, understand its patience." She didn't know whether to laugh or take him seriously, but something in his voice, calm, wise, kind, drew her in. That day, she stayed longer than she planned, sketching as Liam worked. He talked about how he planted each bulb with care, knowing not all would bloom, yet believing in the beauty that would come. Evelyn listened, realizing how similar that sounded to art, and to love. As the days passed, their paths crossed again and again, sometimes in the fields, sometimes in the village market, sometimes by the river that ran through. Liam would bring her flowers freshly cut, explaining their meanings: daisies for hope, lilies for purity, roses for courage. Evelyn began to paint again, this time not to impress anyone, but simply to capture the feeling of sunlight on petals, laughter on a breeze, and the quiet heartbeat of the earth. One afternoon, under a blooming cherry tree, Liam showed her how to plant her first bulb. She laughed at how awkward she was with the trowel, dirt smudging her cheek. He leaned over to guide her hand, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. The world fell still, no sound but the rustle of blossoms above them. Evelyn felt her heart flutter, soft and sudden, like spring's first breeze. When the flower finally bloomed, weeks later, a single pink tulip rising from the soil, Liam smiled at her and said, "See, you gave it life." Evelyn looked at the flower, then at him. "No," she whispered, "it gave me life." From that moment, something wordless began between them, tender, fragile, and full of promise. Evelyn painted him one evening, capturing the warmth of his smile and the sunlight in his hair. When she showed him, he blushed and said, "You've made me look better than I am." "Maybe you just don't see yourself clearly," she replied. The days lengthened, and so did her happiness. Every morning felt like a new canvas waiting to be painted, every evening like a dream that refused to end. Evelyn didn't know where this new feeling would lead, only that it filled her heart with colors she thought she'd lost forever. And as the cherry blossoms drifted to the ground, painting the earth in pink and white, she realized that spring had not only returned to the world, it had returned to her soul. Asterisk, the spring days slowly melted into summer, and with the warmth came a deepening bond between Evelyn and Liam. The meadows that had once been soft and green now glowed gold beneath the sun, the air alive with the hum of bees and the sweet scent of roses from Liam's garden. Life seemed fuller, brighter, and so did Evelyn's heart. Every morning, she would bring her easel to the garden, painting while Liam worked beside her. He would tease her gently, saying she painted too many flowers and not enough smiles. In return, she'd laugh and threaten to paint him with dirt on his nose. Their laughter became a melody that the summer wind carried across the fields. Evelyn's paintings began to change, not just in skill, but in spirit. Her colors deepened, her brushstrokes danced with emotion. Her once empty canvases now shimmered with warmth and tenderness. People in the village began to notice. Some stopped by to see her work, admiring how she captured the essence of life. One of them, Mrs. Alden, the owner of a small local gallery, asked to display a few of Evelyn's paintings. Evelyn hesitated. She had left the city to escape the noise of recognition, but Liam encouraged her. "If your art brings joy, it deserves to be seen," he said softly, his eyes shining with pride. The day her paintings were displayed, people from nearby towns came to view them. They praised her use of light, her warmth, her heart. and among the crowd, a man from the Aurora Gallery in the city recognized her name. "Evelyn Hart," he said with a smile. "Your earlier works were impressive, but these are alive. The city would welcome you back with open arms." Evelyn's heart stirred with old ambitions, the dream of galleries, of acclaim, of proving herself as a great artist. Yet, as she glanced through the window, she saw Liam standing outside, a quiet smile on his face, waiting for her to finish. In that moment, she felt torn between two worlds, the one she had left behind and the one she had found. That evening, as they walked home through the tall grass, glowing orange in the sunset, Evelyn tried to speak. "Liam," she began, "they want me to return to the city for an exhibition. It's just for a few months." He stopped walking. "A few months?" His tone was calm, but there was a shadow in his eyes. "I'll come back," she said quickly. I can't ignore this chance. It's what I've always wanted." Liam looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand. Dreams don't always grow in one place." They walked the rest of the way in silence. The warmth of the evening air felt heavy now, filled with unspoken words. In the days that followed, they tried to make the most of their time. They went on picnics by the river, picked strawberries from the garden, and lay under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. But beneath the laughter, they both felt the ticking of time, every sunrise bringing her closer to the day she would leave. One night, after a village festival, they danced together under lantern light. The music faded, and Evelyn rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Promise me," she whispered, "that you won't forget me." Liam smiled sadly. "How could I forget the person who taught me to see the world in color?" The night breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of lilacs. The stars above shimmered like scattered petals, silent witnesses to a love that was both blooming and breaking. When the morning came, Evelyn stood by the train station with her suitcase. Liam held her hand one last time. "Go chase your dream," he said gently. "Just don't let it take your heart with it." The train whistle sounded, sharp and lonely. Evelyn stepped aboard, her eyes glistening with tears. Through the window, she saw Liam standing on the platform, a single sunflower in his hand, her favorite flower, a symbol of warmth and light. As the train pulled away, she pressed her hand to the glass, whispering a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "I'll come back." The summer sun blazed above the fields, but for both of them, a shadow had settled quietly between the warmth and the light. The shadow of distance, arrived quietly, of dreams, like a sigh that followed the laughter of summer. Seasons. The once bright fields of Willowmere turned shades of amber and gold, and the air carried a chill that hinted at coming change. Leaves danced down from the trees, each one a tiny farewell, and in that soft fading world, Liam worked alone in the garden that had once been filled with Evelyn's voice. It had been 3 months since she boarded the train. At first, letters came every week, warm, tender notes filled with stories of her new life in the city. She told him how people admired her paintings, how the gallery lights made her work glow, like sunlight through glass. She described late nights filled with art and laughter, the rush of attention, the endless inspiration. Each letter ended with the same promise: "I'll be back before the snow." Liam treasured every word. He read her letters by candlelight, hearing her voice in every line. But as the weeks passed, the letters came less often. First once a week, then once a month, then silence. He tried not to worry. He told himself she was busy, that her world had grown brighter. Yet each evening, as he watched the sunset fade behind the hills, he felt her absence more sharply, like the garden losing its color, one petal at a time. Meanwhile, in the city, Evelyn was living the dream she had once longed for. Her exhibition was a success. Critics praised her for the warmth and heart in her work. Yet, even in her triumph, she felt strangely hollow. When people asked about the inspiration behind her garden series, she would smile and say, "A place that taught me how to see." But she could never bring herself to mention Liam. Her new world was dazzling: parties, admirers, opportunities. But at night, when she returned to her apartment, she would find herself sketching the same simple things: tulips, sunflowers, the quiet bend of a river under golden light. Each drawing was a memory of him, of the piece she had left behind. One evening, after a successful gallery event, her mentor, Mr. Vance, congratulated her. "You've found your signature style, Evelyn. Don't look back. The future is here." She smiled politely, but his words stung. Don't look back. Yet her heart was always looking back to Willowmere, to Liam's soft laughter, to the promise of before the snow. When the first snowflakes began to fall outside her apartment window, Evelyn realized how much time had passed. She reached for her sketchbook and found one of Liam's old letters tucked between the pages. His handwriting was steady. "I planted the bulbs you left behind. They'll bloom next spring. Maybe you'll see them." Her hands trembled as she read it. The city lights outside her window blurred through her tears. Had she waited too long? Back in Willowmere, the garden slept beneath a blanket of fallen leaves. Liam still tended it every day, even when frost began to bite at his fingers. The tulip patch where Evelyn had planted her first bulb lay empty now, the soil bare but waiting. The villagers often asked about the artist lady. Liam would only smile and say, "She's painting the world somewhere. I just keep the garden ready." Sometimes, he would sit beneath the cherry tree where they had planted that first flower and imagine her voice. The sound of the wind through the branches almost made it real. But as autumn deepened, he began to accept what the season was telling him, that some things must fade to make room for new life. Still, each time a leaf fell, he couldn't help but whisper her name. By the time winter's first frost arrived, no letter had come for weeks. The silence became his companion, gentle and familiar. And though he tried to convince himself that she had simply moved on, a small part of him, the part that still believed in spring, refused to let go of hope. In the city, Evelyn stood before her finished painting, the last bloom. It showed a single tulip in a garden of fallen leaves, reaching toward the faint light of dawn. She knew it was the best painting she had ever made. And as she looked at it, one thought echoed through her mind. She had painted her own heart. She turned off the lights and whispered to herself, "Before the snow," but the snow had already begun to fall. Winter crept over Willowmere like a soft white shroud. The once lively meadows now lay silent beneath a blanket of snow, and the river that had sparkled through summer days was frozen, its music gone. The garden where laughter once bloomed stood bare and still, a silent memory of brighter days. Liam woke early each morning to clear the snow from the paths. Though no flowers grew, he tended the earth all the same, as if caring for it could keep her spirit close. He would sometimes pause, gazing at the cherry tree where Evelyn had once stood, her pink scarf fluttering in the breeze. The scarf was gone, the blossoms too, but her presence lingered in every breath of wind, in every quiet moment between heartbeats. The villagers noticed how he had changed. He smiled less now, spoke less. When the baker's wife brought him warm bread, he thanked her kindly, but his eyes seemed far away, fixed on something only he could see. "She'll come back," he said once, when the old postman asked if he still expected letters. Spring always follows winter, but as the weeks turned into months, even hope began to freeze. Meanwhile, in the bustling city, Evelyn's world glittered on the surface. Exhibitions, admirers, applause, yet beneath it all, she felt hollow, like a canvas without color. Her success no longer felt like triumph. It felt like a beautiful cage. Every night she returned to her quiet apartment, her reflection in the window looking older. Lonelier. She painted constantly, but her hands no longer trembled with passion, only with exhaustion. She missed the smell of earth, the hum of bees, the warmth of Liam's voice as he talked to his flowers. Most of all, she missed feeling alive. One evening, she attended a gala where her latest work was being auctioned. The room was filled with elegant laughter and the clinking of glasses. Her painting, a serene countryside landscape, sold for a price that made people gasp. Yet, as the crowd cheered, Evelyn stood in silence, staring at the image she had painted: rolling fields, a small cottage, and a man tending a garden under a golden sky. Tears welled in her eyes. The painting was supposed to be art, but to her, it was home. Leaving the celebration early, she walked through the cold streets, her breath misting in the air. The snow fell softly, like memories returning one flake at a time. She passed couples walking hand in hand, their laughter echoing in the night, and felt a pang so deep it almost broke her. For the first time in years, she realized she had traded warmth for walls. That night, unable to sleep, Evelyn opened the drawer where she kept Liam's letters. She unfolded them one by one, her tears blurring the ink. The words were simple, filled with care. "The tulips are sleeping now, but they'll wake when the sun returns. The garden misses your laughter. No matter how cold it gets, spring will find its way." She pressed the last letter to her chest and whispered into the quiet room, "I never should have left." The next morning, Evelyn made her decision. She packed her brushes, her paints, and a few of her favorite canvases. She left a note for her gallery manager: "I need to go back to where the light began." The train to Willowmere was long and cold, but as it moved through the frost-covered countryside, she felt a flicker of warmth stir in her heart, something she hadn't felt in years. Through the window, she saw the snow-covered fields, the same kind Liam must have walked through. She wondered if he would even recognize her now. When she arrived, the village looked the same, yet utterly different. Children played in the snow, and smoke curled from chimneys. She followed the path she knew by heart, up the hill to the cottage, surrounded by bare trees. Her breath caught when she saw it, the garden, asleep under winter's blanket, and in the middle of it, Liam. He was kneeling in the snow, clearing frost from a wooden bench. His hair was touched with gray now, his face older, but his eyes, those steady, kind eyes, were still the same. Evelyn stood silently for a moment, afraid to speak, afraid it might all vanish like a dream. Then, softly, she said, "You kept the garden alive." Liam turned, his breath visible in the cold air. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then a slow, gentle smile spread across his face. "I told you," he said quietly, "spring always comes back." Evelyn's tears fell freely now, mixing with the snow at her feet. "If it will have me," she whispered, "I want to stay this time." He nodded once, eyes shining. "Then we'll plant again when the thaw comes." And as the winter wind swept through the silent garden, when the first light of spring touched Willowmere, it came with soft rain and the faintest scent of new life. Snow melted into glistening streams, and green shoots began to pierce through the thawing soil. The world seemed to stretch after a long sleep, and so did Evelyn's heart. It had been several weeks since she returned. Her days were quiet, filled with gentle routines that reminded her of a peace she had forgotten. Each morning, she rose early and joined Liam in the garden. Together they worked side by side, kneeling in the damp earth, planting bulbs and trimming away the remnants of winter. It was as though time itself was helping them start over. At first, their conversations were simple, polite, cautious, tender. Evelyn felt shy around him, like a girl again, unsure if the man beside her still saw her as the woman who had left. But Liam was patient. He never spoke of the years apart, never asked why she had stopped writing. Instead, he treated her presence as something natural, as if he had always known she would find her way back. One morning, as the sunlight poured through the clouds, Evelyn paused in her work. "You never gave up on the garden," she said softly. Liam looked up from his patch of soil, smiling faintly. "It wasn't just the garden I couldn't give up on." His words lingered between them, warm as the rising sun. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of peace, not regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought chasing my dreams would make me happy, but every painting I made without you felt empty." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle and forgiving. "Sometimes," he said, "we have to lose the light to understand what it means." That spring became a season of renewal, not just for the earth, but for their hearts. The garden bloomed again, brighter and fuller than ever before. The tulip bed they had once planted together came alive in vibrant pinks and yellows, like a living memory reborn. Evelyn painted every petal, every shadow of sunlight, her heart pouring onto the canvas, not as ambition but as gratitude. The villagers noticed her return. Children would peek over the garden fence to watch her paint, and the old postman, who had once asked about her letters, smiled each time he passed. "Told you she'd come back," he said to Liam one day. Liam only nodded, eyes full of quiet pride. Evelyn's art began to take on new meaning. She no longer painted for exhibitions or galleries. She painted for life itself. Her work reflected simplicity, peace, and love, the kind that grows in silence and forgiveness. She began teaching local children how to paint wildflowers, telling them, art isn't about making something perfect. It's about feeling the world and letting it speak through you. One afternoon, while they were working near the cherry tree, the same place where their story had begun, a soft breeze scattered petals all around them. Evelyn looked up, smiling through the pink rain. "Do you remember?" she asked. Liam chuckled. "How could I forget? You tried to plant that tulip upside down." She laughed, the sound light and free. "And you saved it." He met her gaze. "We saved it together." In that moment, Evelyn realized that what they shared was no longer the fiery, uncertain love of youth. It had matured into something deeper, a love rooted in understanding, in forgiveness, in shared silence. It was not the kind of love that demanded, but the kind that endured. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, Evelyn stood back to admire their work. The garden stretched before them, alive with color and promise. "It's perfect," she murmured. Liam shook his head. "It's alive, and that's better than perfect." She smiled, slipping her hand into his. "Then so are we." They stood together beneath the blooming cherry tree, the same one that had witnessed their first meeting, their separation, and now their renewal. Around them, the earth thrummed with quiet life, as if nature itself celebrated their return. For Evelyn, it was not just the season that had changed, it was her heart. She had finally learned that true love, like the garden, survives every storm, every frost, and every distance. It waits patiently beneath the surface, ready to bloom again when the time is right. And so, in that second spring, under skies washed clean by rain and hope, Evelyn and Liam began anew, not from where they had ended, but from where they had truly begun. Summer returned to Willowmere in a burst of color and warmth, and for the first time in years, the season felt like pure happiness. The fields rippled gold beneath the sun, the river sparkled like a ribbon of light, and the air was filled with the hum of life. For Evelyn and Liam, it was as though the world had been reborn, and they with it. Each day began with birdsong. Evelyn would rise early, her heart light, and step outside barefoot, feeling the cool grass between her toes. The garden was a riot of color, tulips, lilies, sunflowers, and roses, all competing for her attention. Liam would already be there, watering the beds or trimming branches, and he'd glance up at her with that same quiet smile that still made her blush. "Morning, artist," he'd say. "Morning, gardener," she'd reply, grinning. The rhythm of their days was simple but full. They worked, laughed, painted, and shared long walks through the meadows where wildflowers swayed like dancers in the wind. Evelyn often carried her sketchbook, stopping now and then to draw something that caught her eye, a butterfly landing on Liam's hat, the curve of the riverbank, the golden light that fell across his face as he looked at her. But this summer, Evelyn's art had changed again. It was no longer about landscapes or perfect technique. It was about emotion, about moments that couldn't be captured, only felt. Her paintings showed laughter, touch, and light, the warmth of love reborn. One afternoon, she decided to surprise Liam. She painted the garden as it was now, alive and flourishing, but in the center of the painting, she placed two figures, one kneeling in the soil, the other holding a paintbrush, both surrounded by blossoms. She titled it Where Love Grew Again. When she showed it to him, Liam stood in silence for a long while. Then, with a soft smile, he said, "You've painted what I feel." Evelyn tilted her head. "And what's that?" He looked at her, eyes warm with affection. "Home," she blinked back tears, touched by the simple truth in his voice. For so long she had believed her art was her home, her identity, her meaning. But now she understood that home was not a place or a pursuit. It was a person. They began spending evenings by the river, sharing stories and memories. Sometimes they spoke of the years apart, not with sadness but gratitude. They both knew now that distance had been their teacher, showing them the cost of pride, the value of patience, and the beauty of finding one another again. On warm nights, they would attend small gatherings in the village square, where music floated through the air and lanterns glowed like fireflies. Evelyn and Liam would dance slowly, their steps unhurried, their laughter soft. The villagers loved seeing them together, often saying they looked like they had stepped out of one of Evelyn's paintings. One night, as they sat by the fire outside their cottage, Evelyn leaned against Liam's shoulder. The night was warm and still, the stars bright above. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I never came back?" she asked. He took her hand gently. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I remember, you did come back, and that's all that matters." Evelyn smiled. "You always make it sound so simple." "Because love is simple," Liam said quietly. "We make it complicated when we forget that." His words lingered in her heart long after the fire had faded to embers. She realized that the love they shared now was different from the wild, uncertain passion of their youth. It was steadier, quieter, but deeper. It no longer burned. It glowed. As summer stretched on, Evelyn began teaching art lessons in the garden for the village children. Liam often helped, building small easels and arranging flowers for them to paint. The laughter of children filled the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the scent of lavender. One day, as she watched Liam helping a child fix a crooked canvas, Evelyn thought, "This is joy. Not fame, not applause, just this simple, honest moment." That evening, she painted again, but not on canvas. She took Liam's hand, dipped her fingers in paint, and pressed them together on the wooden fence, two handprints, side by side. "A promise," she said. He smiled, touching her cheek. "To keep growing," and under the golden sky of summer, surrounded by laughter, color, and love. Evelyn and Liam learned what happiness truly meant, painting not in chasing warm shades of gold, but in living them together, and rust. The garden that had burst with color in the summer now glowed softly beneath the gentler sun, and the air was rich with the scent of ripe apples and earth. Leaves rustled like whispers of time, and the world seemed to move slower, calmer, as if even nature paused to breathe. For Evelyn and Liam, this season no longer brought sadness as it once had. It brought peace. They had seen enough seasons together to understand that change was not something to fear. Change was a rhythm, the steady heartbeat of life itself. Their days now flowed with quiet harmony. Evelyn painted in the mornings while Liam tended to the last of the harvest. He would gather pumpkins and herbs, his steady movements like a prayer of gratitude. Sometimes she would join him, her hands dirt-smudged, her laughter warm. They no longer needed grand adventures. The simple act of sharing days was enough. In the afternoons, they sat on the wooden bench under the old cherry tree, the same one that had witnessed every chapter of their love. Its branches, now bare of flowers, still stretched gracefully over them like a guardian. Evelyn often rested her head on Liam's shoulder as they watched the sun descend over the golden fields. One such afternoon, Evelyn said softly, "Do you ever wish we could go back to the beginning? When we were younger?" Liam thought for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. "No, we were seeds then, full of potential, but we didn't know how to grow. Now, we've become the garden we planted." Evelyn's eyes shimmered. "You always say the right thing." He chuckled. "Maybe I just learned to listen to the seasons." She looked at him, really looked, the lines around his eyes, the silver in his hair, the calm wisdom in his gaze. He was older now, and so was she, but there was beauty in it, the kind that only time could create. She realized that love, like art, gained depth with every year. Her paintings reflected that truth. Gone were the bright bursts of youthful color. Now, her art carried a richness, deeper tones, subtle light, the quiet beauty of things that endure. People from nearby towns began to visit just to see her work. A local newspaper even wrote an article calling her the artist who paints the language of the heart. But fame meant little to her now. When people asked her what inspired her, she would smile and point toward the garden, where Liam worked patiently among the autumn leaves. "That," she would say, "he's the reason my art breathes." Their love had become something quiet and sacred, the kind that didn't need to be spoken to be understood. They had learned the rhythm of each other's silences, the meaning of small gestures, a shared glance, a hand brushed against another's, the comfort of simply being near. One evening, as the wind carried the scent of falling leaves, Liam lit a small fire in the garden. They sat together, watching the flames flicker. Evelyn broke the silence, her voice soft but steady. Do you ever think about how many seasons we've seen? Liam smiled faintly. More than I ever expected, and I'm grateful for everyone. She reached for his hand. Even the winters. Especially the winters, he said. They made the springs mean something. Evelyn felt tears well in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for every season, every mistake, every return. As the fire crackled, she rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady, familiar, eternal. You once told me that spring always comes back, she whispered. You were right. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. And it always will, as long as we keep believing. The moon rose slowly, bathing them in silver light. Around them, the garden rustled softly, alive, even in its fading. Evelyn realized that love was not measured by how passionately it began, but by how gently it endured. Theirs had weathered distance, silence, and time, yet it had not withered. It had simply matured like the autumn itself, rich with color, even as the world prepared for rest. As the night deepened, Evelyn whispered, "When I paint tomorrow, I'll paint this moment." Liam smiled. "Then paint it in gold. It suits us." And under the canopy of falling leaves, their hands intertwined, two souls who had learned that true love does not fight against the passing of time. It flows with it, grows with it, and lasts through every changing season. Winter returned to Willowmere, soft and silent as a sigh. The garden, once alive with color, now lay under a quilt of snow. The world seemed to rest, the branches bare, the sky pale, the air filled with the hush of falling flakes. Yet beneath that stillness, there was life, quiet, patient, waiting. For Evelyn and Liam, this winter felt different. It wasn't a season of endings anymore. It was a time of reflection, of peace earned through years of storms and blooms alike. Their cottage was warm with the glow of the fireplace, its walls lined with Evelyn's paintings, each one a piece of their journey through the seasons. One morning, Evelyn woke early and stood by the frosted window. The world outside shimmered under a pale sun. She smiled, remembering how far they had come. Behind her, Liam stirred, his voice still rough with sleep. "You're up early," he murmured. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "It's so beautiful out there, like the whole world is holding its breath." He joined her by the window, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. They stood together, watching the light spill gently across the snow-covered garden. The old cherry tree stood like a sentinel, its branches etched with ice. "Even without flowers, it's still beautiful," she whispered. Liam nodded. "Because we know what it's waiting for." She looked at him, her eyes tender. "For spring," he smiled. "Always." That day, Evelyn decided to paint one final piece, a painting that would capture everything they had lived through. She set up her easel near the window, her brushes laid out neatly. Liam watched her work, his gaze soft and full of pride. Her hands moved slowly but purposefully. On the canvas, she painted not just the snow and sky, but every season they had shared: the soft greens of spring, the golden warmth of summer, the fiery reds of autumn, and now, the silvery peace of winter. In the center of it all, she painted the cherry tree, bare but glowing, a promise of life beneath the frost. When she finished, she stepped back, her heart swelling with emotion. "It's us," she said quietly. Liam looked at the painting, his voice low. "It's everything we've been," she smiled, "and everything will be." As the days passed, the snow deepened, and the nights grew longer. Yet their hearts remained light. They spent their evenings by the fire, telling old stories, laughing softly, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. Love didn't need words anymore. It lived in the quiet moments, a shared cup of tea, a gentle glance, a hand reaching for another in the dark. One evening, as the snow fell thick outside, Evelyn grew tired and leaned her head on Liam's shoulder. "Do you think," she said, her voice faint but peaceful, "that love really lasts forever?" Liam took her hand and pressed it against his heart. "It doesn't end," he said. "It just changes form, like the seasons. Even when winter comes, spring is still waiting beneath the snow." A smile touched her lips, and she closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat, steady and sure. That winter was quiet, but full of warmth. The villagers often spoke of how the light in their cottage never dimmed, how laughter could be heard even through the snow. Evelyn's final painting hung in the small art gallery by the river, titled "Love Across the Seasons." Visitors often said it felt alive, as if the colors themselves breathed hope. Years later, when the cherry tree bloomed again, villagers noticed two robins building a nest on its highest branch. They said it was a sign that love never really leaves Willowmere. And so, in the heart of winter and the promise of spring, their story lived on. Because true love, like the seasons, never truly ends. It changes, it rests, it renews, forever circling back to life. In the end, Evelyn and Liam's love became the garden itself, timeless, patient, and ever blooming in the memory of the world. Each falling snowflake, each spring blossom, whispered their story. Love does not fade with time. It grows with it. And somewhere, beyond the turning of years and the silence of winter, their hearts kept blooming, an eternal spring that never ceased to shine.